Last night, we had a very successful live seminar on why leasing, and we had a great group of people there with us to talk about how they're managing their natural gas opportunities within an entity such as a family limited partnership or a family LLC. We had some great questions too during and after our conversation. And in this video, I just wanted to share a few that really stood out to me that night. There's two reasons that I want to share this with you. One is that we still have a Montrose meeting coming up scheduled for June 14th. If you'd like to sign up for that one and attend one of these live settings in person, I highly recommend it. I'm still old school, and I just think that face-to-face is the best way to really talk through certain issues. So the second thing is I want you to understand that the majority of you don't have the opportunity to come to these live workshops. I understand that, but I want you to know that the questions you have floating around in your head and the concerns you're worked up about sometimes are shared by many people just like you in your situation. I think that when you're trying to manage your assets and your acreage, not just for yourself, but for your family and your future generations, it can be very complex and it gets very difficult quickly. And it causes people to sort of freeze and choose to take no action. And because any action feels sort of intimidating. And I want you to know that you're not alone. But I also want you to know that there are solutions to the things you're trying to do. We covered some of those last night, and I think people left feeling better educated, more confident that they could move towards some solutions. So let's talk about some of these. First off, I want to thank attorney Paul Rushton from Rosen, Jenkins, and Greenwald, who co-presented with me. He did an excellent job educating and addressing the questions that folks had last night. So I'm going to highlight some of the things that we talked about, but I want to point out that Paul is the expert in this area, not me. So when I touch on these subjects in this video, please understand that this is generic advice. And of course, you need to speak with your own counsel for specific guidance on your own property and your own wishes. With that said, a great question that was asked last night was about how much of your property you might want to transfer into an LLC. So we talked about transferring your entire acreage versus just the subsurface or even the rights to the royalty income only. There are definite advantages to transferring the whole thing. We talked about transfer tax and assessment value. We talked about using common level ratio versus needing to have a professional appraisal done. As with anything, you'll have to weigh a couple of things until you find the right balance, right? So when it comes to what you transfer into an entity like an LLC, we need to recognize where the values lie, how we want to control things or manage things. Do we want separation of some parts or do we want unity? How do we want to direct future income streams? And then ultimately, your basic estate planning needs. All of this should be weighed and measured to come up with the right solution and balance for you and your family. A number of very good questions were asked about liability. And one of the main reasons that folks look at setting up an LLC in the first place or other type of entity is to establish what Paul referred to as a liability shield. That shield is ideally there to protect your personal assets from bad things that may occur in relation to your acreage. So this is a really common question we see in our office as well. It boils down to this: setting up the correct entity and moving assets into such an entity can certainly help to provide a shield of protection. If structured well, you may be able to protect quite a bit. However, there's still often gaps and places where you still need additional protection. So we often recommend umbrella policies in scenarios like that. These are most often purchased through your property and casualty insurance agents and can protect you personally for certain risks that may not be covered through some of the structure that we're talking about. We always encourage our clients, though, to keep their insurance agents well informed about their property and the activity on it, and work together to ensure that you're covered wherever you need to be. There are usually questions around your kids. What do we leave to them? When do we transfer portions of ownership to them? When are we ready to do this? When are they ready? All of these questions are great questions, and each of you watching this video right now have different answers to those questions. So we had some discussion about this very topic last night, and it was quick to see that every family is different, and so any solution could really be on the table for you. What's nice about finding the right professionals to help you is that they can streamline your path to the solutions that you need for you and your family. Now, I kind of described this in the past like going to a librarian and walking into a library and you say, hey, what kind of books do you think I should, read? The librarian's going to have absolutely no way of answering that question for you. But if you told them you're looking for a specific kind of book by certain types of authors or whatever, they could walk you right to the aisle, right to the exact spot and get you the book and the solutions that the whole process basically becomes easy. So good professionals, whether it's financial planners, attorneys, accountants, insurance agents, they should listen, and then move you toward that solution. There were also some questions around what type of entity options do I have? And for some folks who already made such a move, their questions were more about whether or not that the entity that is still right in place for them is still the right kind of entity to continue using. I think Paul did a really nice job talking through options like this, setting up trusts, forming family limited partnership, and of course a family LLC. Now, each of them has their pros and their cons, but I think Paul did a really nice job illustrating the differences last night. I won't do it justice by trying to describe it in this video, so please think about attending our June 14th seminar in Montrose, or just reach out to Paul Rushton at his firm or my office directly, and we'll see if we can help you with any of your questions. The last point I bring up that seemed to resonate last night, and I know it resonates with a lot of clients that we work with in our office, is that this kind of planning that people are doing by setting up these entities and transferring their acreage into these, it's really generational planning. It's not necessarily your typical retirement planning for mom and dad as much as it is for everyone in the family. But I think there are still many folks out there who have yet to actually bring their kids up to speed with what's going on. And I'm not talking about just letting them know, hey, we're giving you some ownership in this family farm. I'm talking about having them actually sit in on the meetings with you and your financial planners or attorneys, accountants, or all of the above. They probably don't need to be aware of every single detail, but the main reason people set these plans in motion is for a smooth transition from one generation to the next. I'm telling you from experience of what we see in our industry, that transition is probably not going to be a smooth one if the next generation up is unaware of how things work or why those were even set in motion. Taking the time to explain to them and have someone like us explain to them why you did things can alleviate a lot of stress and confusion and second guessing of what mom and dad had in mind. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. Sometimes we have very little or no control whether or not our kids get along. But the very last thing from a parent's perspective that we want is to be the reason that our kids do not get along. And this is why I'm stressing the importance of bringing your kids into this loop so they know, at least in general, what you're trying to achieve. And each year, they get a little bit closer to understanding that it will someday be their turn to take the wheel.